I'm Catherine Lutzinger, a member of the board of the Walnut Creek Library Foundation, and I'd like to welcome you to our virtual Live from the Library program, California of Peril and Stewardship, with author Obi Kaufmann. I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, the Simpson family, Masterpiece sponsor, Whittier Trust, classic sponsors, Cindy and Bob Britton, Cynthia and Mark Jordan, Rutan and Tucker LLP, best-selling sponsor, Judy Whalen and Robert Simmons, as well as our print and media sponsors, Diablo Magazine, East Bay Times, and Minuteman Press Lafayette. Obi Kaufmann is a native Californian based in Oakland and is an avid conservationist and intrepid explorer of California ecology and the natural world. His most recent book, The Forests of California, Heyday 2020, is the first volume of his ambitious new California Lands trilogy. He is also the author of the heralded The California Field Atlas, Heyday 2017, and State of Water, Understanding California's Most Precious Resource. His artistry, research, and reverence for the natural world have been covered in such publications as the San Francisco Chronicle, Los Angeles Review of Books, and Sunset Magazine. Let's get ready to learn more about our California's resource landscape from its ancient origins through its modern challenges to its future possibilities. If you enjoyed tonight's program, please consider making a donation to the Library Foundation to support our programs. Visit our website, www.wclibrary.org, to donate, or click on the link located in the chat box. Kimberly and Alex Moore will be matching gifts tonight up to $250. Following Obi's presentation, we will have a brief Q&A. You can submit your questions in the Q&A box at any time. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Obi Kaufmann.
Hello, 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 hello. Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome, and good evening, Obi.
How are you?
Great, thank you.
Great. Well, I'm certainly happy to be here, and I am really excited to share with you what I'm going to share with you tonight. I've tailored a particular kind of presentation for you, given what I think or what I imagine my audience to actually be. I am Walnut Creek, my hometown. I'm very grateful for the Walnut Creek Library Foundation for hosting this tonight. I am grateful to Susan Moon, to Sherilyn Kelly, and to Catherine Lutzinger for that kind welcome. And I encourage all of you in our local community here to support their efforts. I understand that on April 7th is National Library Giving Day, so please put that on your calendar. And I also understand that the next speaker is going to be also a co-author of mine on, or at least we share the same publisher, Josie Islin, with her book, The Curious World of Seaweed, which is a fantastic artistic and scientific romp, much in the vein of my own work. So please tune in for that. Check their calendar there. Now, I'm really indebted to the Bay Area literary community in general, from libraries to artists and writers to bookstores. Tonight we have Flashlight Books in Walnut Creek sponsoring and supporting us and me. It's a good place to get this book. I sent them a bunch of book plates so you can get a signed book of my newest entry, the California Field Atlas. So please check that out and support them. I know that Walnut Creek and the Diablo Valley, where I grew up, there's just a few stalwart independent bookstores left. I live in Oakland now, and I have 4 quality bookstores within walking distance of my house, and I could not imagine a could not imagine it differently. I will be uh, talking at great length tonight about books, uh, and that is the driving theme of tonight's presentation, where I am not actually going to walk you through a this and a that of uh, policy, of prescription, of environmental grievances. I would like to present it in a completely different light, just cast the whole thing differently in terms of a very personal journey that I am on. In fact, tonight I'm going to share with you some of my story as it is unfolding right now today, some of my thinking through this process of making all of these books, what the vision is, how it relates to the larger community, how I wish that we were doing this live together. Um, how I wish that I could look into your eyes and experience with you that very special alchemy that happens when humans gather and discuss ideas. Alas, here I am in my study, um, hoping that and trusting that you will follow me, my community, my hometown people. I grew up here on Mount Diablo. Uh, I grew up here on Mount Diablo, having moved from Southern California with my family, of course, when I was about 5 years old, when Danville had 2 stoplights. That would be my hometown. I went to high school at the Athenian School right at the base of Mount Diablo and spent all afternoon when my dad didn't have me studying math. He was an astrophysicist himself. Dr. William Kaufmann was going to make a mathematician out of his son. Alas, he made a painter who would rather be off exploring the biodiversity of that precious jewel of wilderness we have in the form of Mount Diablo, that geographic anomaly that sticks out like a thumb into the Central Valley, catches all the seeds from the temperate Northwest and all the seeds from the desert Southwest to form these amazing wildflower blooms, the likes of which don't occur anywhere in California's long, varied geography. It is a unique place, and the bloom is just really kicking in now. April is there's something blooming on Diablo all 12 months of the year, but April is really the month historically when you get the best bloom. So please take your kids there. It's memories that I will never forget: climbing waterfalls, tracking mountain lions and coyotes, being thrilled on days when I spot a golden eagle, playing with tarantulas, mapping the sagebrush mazes. These are the kinds of endeavors that filled my afternoons when I wasn't reading or painting. Reading, painting, hiking. This is what and how I have spent my pandemic. This is actually, who am I kidding? It's how I have spent my life. I have formed a nice equilibrium really between this 1-to-1 to 1-to-1 ratio between the painting, the writing, the reading, and the hiking. In fact, it's almost as if I am my yoga practice. I am a yogi that can trade one for the other. If I can't go backpacking because I'm trying to honor a shelter-in-place order, I will let my mind traverse the miles of printed ink in a book. Um, I will, and when I am walking through a forest, I can again uh, find that experience of reading, of unfolding, of the narrative passing through me in the experience of walking through a living forest habitat space. In 2017, I came out with my first book, The California Field Atlas, which was this larger effort to how about this? This is not something that I've really said before, but it's just to combat this dread, this soul nostalgia, this heartbreak, this homesickness for a place that I felt like I had missed, the natural world of California, that we were on this long, we were involved in this defeat that was unfolding, this slow, deleterious trajectory towards simplification within the natural world of California. And yet, as I was learning, as I was researching the book, finally knowing, because I mean, the first line of the book is that this is a love story. This is my affection for this place. This is searching finally for how to be more from here. Of course, Catherine said that I am a native Californian. I'm not a native Californian. I am a Californian. I was born in California, but I do not belong to a native Californian community per se. That is a living, grand tradition of indigenous people across California that are very much still here. And I will be talking a little bit about our responsibility to that sovereignty that still exists as we go on here. I'm just, again, talking about my own experience as wanting to be more from here, to quote the great author and farmer Wendell Berry when confronted or when asked about what can I do, and we'll come back to this later in the presentation too. What can I do as an individual? And he said, well, pick somewhere. I think this is one of the best answers anybody's ever given to that specific question. And I get asked that question a lot too. And I will bounce around different ideas about what I think individuals can do if you're too sharing this sharing this ache. If you identify with the movement that says that we need to learn more about how to be in tune with this place and how we might expel ourselves from what Naomi Klein calls the gig and the dig economy. The gig economy, you might have heard that recently, where we're all sort of bouncing from one job to another trying to make the money. The dig economy, where all of the economy is based on extraction of some resource, be it material from the earth or labor, human extraction. Anyway, Wendell Berry says, find a place and begin the 1,000-year process of getting to know that place. And so, taking that as inspiration, this is my continued quest. The California Field Atlas, arranged by earth, air, fire, and water, describing the larger biogeochemical forces, if you will, the macro systems of California and how they are alive and how they are valued beyond their utility. I then wanted to write a big book on forests. I was toying with the idea of calling it the Mountains of California, but John Muir beat me to it by about 100 years. So the forests of California is the first line of that book is that this is a family album. So just as love matures from a love story through to the evolution of a family and this lifelong quest of mine to get to know California, to be more from this place, becomes a family album ultimately. But I had to go there I knew that I couldn't go to forest before going through water. And what I mean by that is that the water infrastructure of California rivals anything that humans have ever done on a scale, on a landscape transforming scale that rivals anything that humans have done with any substance at any period of time in history, including I would say that it rivals even the Great Pyramids or the Wall of China. It is that monumental. It is that fundamentally transforming. And so in order to understand that, I basically did a giant math problem and presented it as a book of poetry, which is the state of water, understanding California's most precious resource. At the end of that book, finally, after touring the book for a year, I realized that it wasn't actually water at all that is our most precious resource. The subtitle implying, of course, that it is. Our most precious resource is our ability to trust each other with the story of truth. These are 6 books that have influenced me to great a great degree. In fact, Barry Lopez, Giving Birth to Thunder, Sleeping with His Daughter, Coyote Builds North America. That is my Instagram handle at Coyote Thunder. Please follow me there for, yes, every few days I'll post a picture. Maybe it's a new painting, but I like to couple it with some sort of poetic verse that gets to some vulnerable part of me and what I am thinking lately about how these pieces are coming together in the larger story that I'm telling. Barry Lopez, one of the great nature writers. This book is a collection of 50 stories about a very sophisticated mythological construct that is then applied to the religious template of and cultural template of Coyote as a personality, as a person in nature, as a force of nature that is both a creator and a trickster. E.O. Wilson, the second book there, Consilience, the Unity of All Knowledge, is E.O. Wilson being our greatest living naturalist. He headed up Harvard biology for, well, entomology specifically, for many decades. Consilience was a book he wrote in the late 90s where he says that by through the careful stitching of both the humanities and the physical sciences might we come to an idea of truth, holistic understanding that I aim for. I'm not here, as you can already tell 10 minutes into this presentation. I'm not interested so much in relaying data. I'm not a scientist. My work is data driven. I yield to science objective truth. I would like to marry that, and this is where Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson comes in, where he says there's basically 3 kinds of truth, or at least that's a way you can think about truth in general. We have the political, the personal, and the objective truth. The objective truth being for the physical sciences, as a methodology for their inquiry. The personal and political truths, though, that's the realm of the humanities. That is what makes us unique in all the universe. Science does not. I think my father would agree, although he's passed on now a couple of decades ago. He wrote 18 textbooks, I believe. It was what he had going on, black holes and warped space-time. I'm very sensitive to what science was, is, and can be. I am, and I don't make textbooks. I know I'm very, again, sensitive to the idea of what a textbook is. I don't leave you alone with the facts. These books are full of my experiences, my paintings. Don't be alarmed if you see a purple coyote. I have seen purple coyote. It's just a trick of the light at sunset. Condor Journal and the rock paintings of the Chumash taught me more. Well, I went to school at UC Santa Barbara, spending most days skipping class, backpacking the backcountry, and searching for the Chumash art sites, and wanting, dreaming, praying to one day see a condor. I didn't see a condor until my mid 30s, uh, Big Sur, and that is uh, one of the great moments of my life for sure. Lastly, we have The Sound of Mountain Water, Wallace Stegner, perhaps my favorite novelist of the 20th century, my favorite California novelist. This is now he is his ability to craft a sentence is like none other, and in the early 60s he was instrumental. His words were instrumental in convincing Congress to pass the Federal Wilderness Act of 1964. Today, nearly 19% of California's total geography is locked into federal protection of the most stringent kind, which is protected by the Federal Wilderness Act. It puts wilderness aside from humanity. It was his language that famously comes when he says a place untrammeled where mankind, I think he just said where man was not meant to stay or linger for too long. Of course, this is now evolving. This is before, and we'll get into this in a little bit, before ecological notions of biogeography, where you're getting scientific knowledge meeting indigenous knowledge, where you have even in the year 2020, 2021 now, we are thinking that 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 kind of sequestration of nature, or even more terribly, nature would be better off without us. That kind of thinking is colonialist thinking. How do we stop being settlers and start being from this place? Again, it gets back to respecting the sovereignty of indigenous peoples. Biodiversity. So, I was talking about how I felt when I was learning how to backpack in the 1980s, and I'll have a big list for you guys to of all these books, because you're going to want to get all these books. This is essential reading uh, to not only the solutions but the problems, right? The challenges that face us, uh, and you need a book to do that. Books, you need that time. A book is a trail into the nature of mind itself. It's a terribly important technology, and one that we are losing. But perhaps we can turn that around as well as what these books here on this slide might represent, which would be uh, some particular aspects, qualities of biodiversity in California that are important to restore. Restoration is a word I use again and again because it was only 170 years ago that Marshall found that speck of that yellow rock in the American River and began a wave of extraction and settlement that has left us with tattered and yet intact remnants of our unique biodiverse portfolio here in the California floristic province and in the deserts beyond the Sierra Nevada. For example, beaver. It was estimated, well, let me back up a little bit. There was before the gold rush, there was another rush that took place in the early 19th century. That was the fur rush for beavers, and it decimated a population that was a population of these ecosystem engineers across the state. A beaver lodge, the technology of the beaver lodge, the dam that forms the beaver, makes possible an incredible food web, a habitat space that where the types of the types of organisms found can increase in their diversity up to 140% above what they would be without that. Just around the pond itself, I'm talking about the presence of anadromous fish. I'm talking about the presence of riparian invertebrates. I'm talking about the diversity of several different species of bees, perhaps up to several hundred different species of bees, one for each flower type, almost one for each flower, if you've ever seen it. So these books that are incredibly important to understand. Oh, Dan Flores' book, Coyote America, is a wonderful romp through the modern day context and where this very interesting canid predator lives, and doing better than ever, even though we destroy 50,000 or so coyotes a year. Their population is bigger than ever. We certainly do indeed have something to learn from this creator trickster, don't we? So I was talking about the beaver before. I'm talking about endangered species, endangered biodiversity. Now, every single one of our landscape types is either endangered or threatened. Every single one of them. I'm talking about native California grassland. I'm talking about old growth redwood habitat. I'm talking about coastal sage scrub. They're all holding on to little bits of connective tissue that where corridor ecology is able to take a foothold and keep, up until now, to keep holding on to existence at all before extirpation and ultimately extinction. All California is incredibly diverse. There's the California Forestic Province takes 4% of North America's total land mass, although 40% of its flora and fauna are found within its borders. Its natural borders as defined by the Sierra Nevada, the longest contiguous mountain range in America, 400 miles in length, which shields it, almost makes it into an island, an evolutionary island. So while we have more diversity, it's also all still here. We have a very low extinction rate, and our extinction rate in California is actually less than 1%. Now, it is very dangerous and very difficult to call something extinct. Because when you call something extinct, when you call an organism, a species extinct, you are ultimately stopping time for that species. And what I mean by that is that the hope of finding some relict population somewhere that managed to find some refugia and hold on, the hope is gone. The only way hope is extinguished is by ending time. There is a temporal component to hope. If there is time, there is hope. And this is one of those thoughts that gets me out of bed in the morning. This is like, it's all still here. Now, we've lost some wonderful species, including 2021. 2021 is the century mark for the last, well, I'm sorry, 1921 was when the last California grizzly was killed in the Sequoia National Forest. 100 years ago, we had the largest bear on the North American continent. Um, yeah, these bears were larger than the Kodiak bears, getting fat off the salmon, that were one of the largest and certainly the southernmost runs of the Chinook uh, across their Pacific range, uh, through the San Joaquin and Sacramento rivers, flooded as they were in May. I mean, you can see it. You can see these people-sized salmon, hundreds of thousands of them, which is what the run was just 100 years ago. Hundreds of thousands of these adult salmon returning up to the headwaters, now dammed and impounded headwaters, but leaping from beaver terrace to beaver terrace like a staircase up to reclaim their birthright and to settle their mortal body down in the forest. And then the snows come, and then the floods come, and like a clock, all of those hundreds of thousands of metric tons of calcium and phosphorus and nitrogen flooding and spreading out behind the beaver dams to feed the forest. Now our forests are fragmented, simplified, overpopulated, stressed, and diseased. So, but that being said, there two things can be true at the same time, which is an ecological truth that I come back to again and again in my work. And it's very difficult for a linear mind, especially one so engaged regularly with the the illness-inducing medication. How about that for two things being true at the same time? The illness-inducing medication of like social media or the 24/7-hour news cycle. What is true might only be true over a certain time scale. And over different time scales, as you see. So I'm all about time and space together in this format called an atlas. That's where you come up with the how things work. Over the right time scale, you can make the argument that things are at once getting worse and getting better, because we know what our job is. We know what our job is. The solutions to these problems, to this bottleneck that we are increasing, we are going quicker and quicker in. When I started this book, when I wrote the California Field Atlas 5 years ago, I thought that a couple of things. One, I thought that the hard limits on what our biosphere could take were further out into the future. I've seen so much damage done in the 5 years. We all have. It's accelerating. Back then, I thought too that incremental policy, incrementalism, was how we were going to get away from the gig and the dig economy towards a more systemic, biomimetic, something that reflects nature, biomimicry, an economy, a society that was more circular in its taking and its giving, in its acknowledgement of its taking of our rights and giving back as our responsibilities. I thought that incrementalism was a way, but now it seems that incrementalism means only a hot and cruel future. in the words of Naomi Klein, the noted climate scientist. And lastly, the third thing, the thing that I have really come to understand acutely, was that technological fixes, techno fixes, are not the panacea that I had thought that they might be. We have really come to a reckoning in the past 5 years that no longer can these policies, can these ideas be siloed away from justice. There can be no environmental justice without racial justice. It is a fascinating course that we are on, to realize that in order to live in order to continue inside of this living space, this biosphere, we need to reckon with one another in a way that is wholly rejecting the divisiveness that we are sold day in and day out, between however you want to split us up. So I've got 3 more books coming out: Coasts, Deserts, Fire. And as Catherine mentioned in the beginning, I am doing the California Lands trilogy between forests, coasts, and deserts. And these are again temporal, between the time and the space. Forests is a measure of my new way of thinking of these books is in terms of time, as in terms of this temporal dimension, where forest is deep time, right? Going back all the way to the 300 million year genetic history legacy, really, of the forests that we have here now. And what, after the 6th mass extinction, as biologists, ecologists call it, that we are in the grips of right now, and that will be playing out for hundreds of thousands of years to come. What will the future forests look like? And that, but you see, the other temporal aspects, we have the coasts of California, which is the book I just finished right now. In fact, yesterday was the last day of the editing. I'm looking forward to saying goodnight. After saying goodnight to you all, I'm going to sleep for a week. I might just do that. These books take a lot of work, but there's ever since a little painter growing up, I wanted the Art of Obi Kaufmann book. Of course, every painter does. What a boring book that would have been. I got that book, but I got to give it to the thing that I love most in the universe, the natural world of California. The coasts, getting back to that temporal idea, the coasts is a picture of right now. The coasts of California are much different than they were 100 years ago, and they will be much different 100 years from now. So all I could do with the coast is take a picture of right now, before we experience the effects of so many cascading feedback loops, the effects of sea level rise, the effects of simplification. I mentioned before that it was 100 years since we killed the last California grizzly. It looks like 2021 will be the year that we say goodbye to wild Delta smelt, which is a tiny little fish in the Delta just north of us here, that historically has been extremely important in maintaining the food web and the ecosystem functions and services of the San Francisco Bay San Joaquin Delta. So that's a sad piece of news. which would lead, of course, into the deserts of California, which is a book about the future, getting back to that temporal aspect, a book about the future. Desertification is much different than a working ancient desert. And traversing that landscape as we do experience a hotter, more arid climate. Uh, now, again, I mean, this little bubble we have, this bottleneck where two things can be true at once. The decisions that we are making right now over the next decade will influence the quality of our residency here over the next several thousand years. Fire will finish the Game of Thrones of California nature that I'm writing here, and that'll come out in a few years. How, where, and why California burns. There are many answers to that question, or those questions, and it's changing. It's rapidly changing. We saw beginning August 16th of 2020 when began a fire season of 90 days that saw half of the total land acreage burned in the past 90 years burned in 90 days. Now there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity where we can reset like the forest and start again. And there's also a great challenge because that's not the last big major fire season. I predict that in the next 5 years, we are going to see 4 to 5 million acres in one season in the Sierra Nevada. And we might even lose some towns. It's a terrible prediction, but that's what we get. That's what we get with that terrible, well, let's talk about something else for a second. Okay, here we are with some more books. If you haven't read The Overstory by Richard Powers, you got to get into it. It's been like #1 fiction bestseller for years now, and rightly so. People's relationship to trees. How do we overcome plant blindness? People just see green. One of the first ways to get to be from a place is to get to know your neighbors, huh? What are the plants here? Corridor ecology. I have this is by the same team that made the California Naturalist Handbook, and their new book is going to be called California Climate Stewardship, and that will be coming out this summer. And I did all the illustrations for it. Yay! I can't wait. And that will be part of a certification course through UC Berkeley, where you can actually become a certified California climate steward. And let's all go get that. Okay, come on, let's support that. The Ohlone Way by Malcolm Margolin. Malcolm Margolin was the guy who founded my publisher, Heyday Books. Heyday Books. Oh, here's Josie's book right here. So, Heyday Books. Can you see that? Yeah. Magnificent crew. The Ohlone Way. If you have not encountered the Ohlone Way, take some time, especially if you're a resident of the Bay Area. This describes how fecund this land we are sitting on is, if you acknowledge that you are a part of it. What an invitation it is. And then, of course, the climate report, which is, something that another one of these books I have just draped in Post-it notes. The adaptive cycle is a cycle that is breaking down across so many arboreal habitats in California. The release being the thing that how energy moves within the living thing of the living system of the watershed, of the carbon shed, of the fire shed. This is how the clock works. So here is some more of this deep time work, where I'm considering what has been and what shall ever be, despite this so successfully imposed urban template we've got going on. The Yuba River, those three forks began cutting those that course down the western slope of Nevada, what is now Nevada County, and some other counties. That water began its course about 10 million years ago. Like when you go to that place, and I encourage you to go to that place, be respectful of that place, but put your feet in the water, take your shoes off, take the time to get to know this river, or we have many beautiful rivers around that you should connect with. Water is very important and will become there's an understatement. Water is not only very important, water is everything. A good place to start, and this is another thing, tacking onto what I said about Wendellberry earlier, about getting to be more from this place and what can you do. A good thing to ask yourself at the end of the day, at the end of today, at the end of every day, is, what have I done for water today? What have I done for these living systems? Water is alive. We'll be getting back to that in just a minute. Now, that's 10 million years ago, Yuba started flowing. 10 million years from now, when the peninsula of Baja becomes the island of Baja and moves along the San Andreas Fault and its clockwork conveyance up to what will then be the archipelago of San Francisco. That will be what we now know from island biogeography. And I think that's my next slide. Now I got 2 slides to go before I start talking about island biogeography. And I know I've got about 10, 15 minutes left. So I'll begin to make some of my larger points. But we were recovering from the 6th mass extinction at that point, moving towards what will ultimately be the 7th mass extinction. Who knows what kinds of forests, what kinds of vertebrates, if even vertebrates, rule that place. Evolution is beautifully unplanned, and what a profound goal it is for our species to see as much of that future as possible. Getting rid of the gig and dig economy is a first step. Becoming good ancestors is our primary purpose. Getting back to water for just a second, we have Wallace Stegner coming up to view again with the Beyond the 100th Meridian. That's my old copy of it. That's the copy I read in high school. I mean, it rivaled Lord of the Rings really for adventure. I mean, this is Colonel Wesley Powell's journey down the Grand Canyon, the Colorado River, before anyone had done such a thing with one arm. It is as adventurous a story as anyone has ever told, and in Stegner's capable writing, it is gripping. He also Powell then went on to become our nation's first director of the USGS, the Geologic Survey, which and in his survey of the West, he said, water will forever define reality for the West. And he recommended, instead of straight lines, that we cut the states up by watersheds, as that will be the true determination of wealth. The two books that have most influenced me recently on a journalistic level are Mark Reisner's Cadillac Desert and Mark Ericks's The Dreamland, which came out the same year that my State of Water book came out. Now, Mark's scope is really tied to his homeland of the San Joaquin Valley, but it's revealing, it's fascinating, it's ground zero for the water wars. It's incredibly personal to him, and it's a very personable and intimate story, and I recommend for any of you who have driven down I-5 and seen those billboards and questioned that propaganda, to read his book so you can formulate your own opinions and become, an informed citizen, please. Informed citizenry, um, geographic literacy, how we have to know where we are, what these processes in nature and how they unfold. We live in a place that is cursed and blessed. Here we go back to this idea of two things being true at the same time. On an ecological scale, on a climate scale, we have. Remember, I was describing how the salmon fill the nutrients of all of those bodies as they have been deposited. All those salmon bodies have, as they've been deposited at their headwaters, flooding down the Yuba into the Sacramento and San Joaquin River valleys and creating this Holocene alluvium over thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of years. You have some of the richest soil that the planet has ever known. And yet, you only get about 7 to 13 inches of rain. It takes about 20 inches of rain to grow anything without irrigation. And so we had to fix, quote unquote, fix the water geography of the state, which is, as wonderful as it is another thing that its creation will be rivaled only by its second edition over the next 100 years. Its creation over the past 100 years will be rivaled in complexity and challenges as it is transformed over the next 100 years. We've got a similar attitude towards fire, where fire being our attitudes have been largely based in bad science and by the timber industry, and through what I might suggest is colonial violence. There were anthropogenic, human-caused fire regimes across California pre-Euro-American settlement. And that all came to a terrible end. And that needs to be refound. We being white Euro-American settlers, are trying to remember something that we've never known. And that's a very difficult process. But we can get there. We can get there. With the help of some good books. Elizabeth Colbert, her new book, Under the White Sky, is a fascinating read into ways that we have tried to fix. There's that word again, right? Fix, as if it's a machine that we are, or a car that we are simply changing the oil of, and then it will run forever. So Elizabeth Colbert, and she's the one who actually wrote the groundbreaking book, The Sixth Mass Extinction. Her new book is about how we've tried to fix situations and actually made things worse. And that in my mind is balanced by Terry Tempest Williams. And her book, well, she's one of the great writers of the West. You have to know her work. Erosion, Essays of Undoing its relationship to the land over the past 4 years, as she has wrestled with what the reality of the policies of our 45th president and what those policies mean to her as a person with this very intimate and deep knowledge of the landscape. I would like to, Desert Notebooks, the last one here by Ben Ehrenreich, when he talked, I was thinking about tonight, in the books, and he says, we're all part of the, literary people, we're all part of this, like, this conversation, this continuum, and he says, but he's talking about, but what if it's going to end soon? In this idea of this continuum through literature, from the deep past, and we always thought it would just be into the deep future, but he warns us. He says, but what if it's going to end soon? What if someone in a generation, perhaps two, will write the very last word? What if the future does not include enough human beings to keep the conversation going? What if it drifts off like a party at the end of the night with only a few drunks left mumbling in the corners? What if the humans who remain are too busy surviving to tend to the books and their servers? What if literacy has a horizon and it's near? So that's a chilling thought, but I wanted to jump off that into this book. So we've all got Greta Thunberg in our minds and in our hearts. We have her slamming the table literally and proverbially. I wake up with her. I wake up with this idea. I wake up with uh, um, the very good and strong idea that the children now, with the Sunrise Movement here in America, with the Extinction Rebellion, and in the UK, we've got in the climate strikes of Europe, we've got some shifting ideas going on. The Island of Biogeography by Robert MacArthur and Edward Wilson in 1968 was the first book that tied Darwinian evolution to landscape macro systems. We didn't understand that the land itself evolves much like organisms until then, 1968. That's like just a few years before I was born. That was 10 years after we understood DNA. This story is changing rapidly. That's just within our lifetimes. We're learning so much right now, and there is so very much to learn. We and in learning is the hope of the world. We've got a whole course of policies and laws. I'm just going to keep you for a couple more minutes, so stick with me here as we have left the 20th century. I was talking about Wall Stegner and the wilderness idea. As we leave the 20th century, as we are discussing now conservation policy going into the 22nd century, and we're thinking about what ideas to hold on to and what to let go of. One of my favorite ideas is legal personhood for watersheds, as we have seen by the Yurok tribe in has just the tribal court has just deemed that the Klamath River itself is deserving of the rights of personhood. Similar in a way that the corporations were granted rights of free speech and freedom of religion and whatnot. So too it is that rivers deserve their intrinsic value of outweighing the utilitarian value of their dismantlement. Up there in the corner too, we've got Merlin Sheldrake's Entangled Life, where we talk about the biological dark matter in the ground, the lichenizing mycelial mat that by which all forests exist and soil itself becomes fertile, is alive, perhaps thinking. Where do we stop then? Let's let the slippery slope be a slippery slope, and let us let go of our myopic, selfish words like consciousness and sentience, and open ourselves up to the possibility of a better story, an inclusive story for a more than human community. So lastly, of course, this is a long haul, and I laid a lot out here tonight. I encounter all the time people so like desperate for what they can do. What can I do? First, I usually say, okay, when was the last time you went camping? Uh, go hiking. Go, as I said before, take your boots off, touch the water, and don't blame yourself too much. Don't destroy yourselves over this. Do what sustains you. This is a long fight. This is a long haul. We are going to need you unpanicked. We are going to need you grounded. And we are going to need you ready for what comes next. Okay, so with that, here at 8:04, I really appreciate this time. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to invite Catherine back on. Hello, Catherine. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much, Obi. Your words are personal and profound. They ignite in us a passion for the outdoors and a strong, strong feeling of hope. But I do need to
Thank you.
respectfully disagree with you about one thing. I think a book about of your painting would be far from boring. I think we would love to see that. But
Thank you. Thank you.
let's get on with some questions from the audience. And our first question comes from Bob. Obi, I did not realize you grew up in this area. Could you talk about what your youth was like? You did a little, and how it formed your view of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Danville, Sycamore Valley specifically. So it was I think it's just a different time before this quickening of technology, right? That has influenced and infused all of our lives. I mean, we had 3 channels on the TV, and I was allowed exactly 60 minutes per day, and uh, that was rarely taken because I was distracted as a boy by the oak trees and by the geodes in the creek, along with the crayfish in Osage Creek there, and that runs through Danville. Now that crayfish are gone, mostly. If one of you has seen such beautiful little organisms in Osage Creek, let me know. But yeah, Diablo, was right there, and I could scamper up whenever I wanted. I didn't know to be certainly not afraid of rattlesnakes or tarantulas or scorpions. I mean, they were all just sort of like there, or mountain lions. The only creature I ever was scared of was the wild pigs. The wild pigs up there will, if you see one, look for a tree, and climb it. They're just jerks. They'll just come and they'll just mess with you just to mess with you, and they can hurt you too. So uh, fortunately, encounters are few and far between, but you can see all over the park now that there are um, uh, cages, traps for trying to control that population. Now, it wasn't just the state park. I was also grew up on lands that are now stewarded by the John Muir Land Trust, which is along with Save Mount Diablo, which is the Mount Diablo Land Trust. You have John Muir Land Trust, which has some fantastic properties all the way stretching down to Las Trampas, which is the East Bay Regional Parks District. So you've got these 3 fantastic land stewarding organizations, and I think that ultimately, as we get past, I don't know, this fragmented spasm of land management and stewardship, we will see that it is the land trusts that have held together the connective tissue that we need to connect different wild spaces and valuable habitat frontier, really, on the interface between what is intact and what is paved. So yeah, so any discussion of my childhood comes back to I don't know, land management. but yeah, it was 2 hours a night of math homework with my dad. Uh, bless his heart. It was a stack of white paper, sharp can of number twos, and calculus, and that's pretty much still the way I work today.
Oh, thank you, Obi. We have another question. You write about wilderness talking and wilderness listening.
Mm.
Can you explore that with us tonight? Do you
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
the pandemic has allowed more of it to happen, maybe without people even realizing it?
Mm. Uh, yeah. I mean, there's inner wildernesses and there's outer wildernesses, and we've all explored the inner wildernesses a lot this year. As I mean, I know I have. This is the least amount of 2020 was the least amount of backpacking I've done in 15 years at least. It's because honoring the shelter in place and trying not to trample through communities that you inevitably have to go through to get to um, wilderness areas, and then a lot of our coastal areas have just been torched to some degree. One of my favorites is the Ventano Wilderness down there in Big Sur, which has been closed since August because of the Dolan fire, which was massively devastating on the heels of the Soberanes fire that happened a couple of years ago. So we've got this we've got a lot of cleanup to do. So wilderness talking, yes. You can hear the trees speaking to you. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's painful to realize. Like, for example, uh, here's a little hot take on the redwood forests. The tallest forests of the world, Sequoia sempervirens, the coastal redwood that begins its march north from the drainages of Big Sur, namely Salmon Creek, all the way up to the border of Oregon. The last redwood grows about just a couple of miles north of the Oregon border, where they attain their maximum height at 380 feet. Hyperion, I believe, is still the tallest tree in the world, and that on an undisclosed location. Anyway, we have less than 5% of our old growth habitat, redwood habitat, left. But we still have all our redwood trees. Let me explain what I mean by that. Redwoods plan to live for 2,000 years, and they have such a complete strategy, a whole toolkit of available resources that they can call upon in order to make this happen with inside of their habitat range there, including being cut down. You can cut a redwood down and you don't kill it. And that is the nature of what I was talking before, that interconnected bio dark matter. I don't know if you can hear my dog's squeaky toy, but he's having a good time over there. Um, this layer of this layer of nutrients, that the living nutrients, this mycelia that connects the whole forest, the trees continue to grow. That's why you see these rings, like from a stump growth happens, and the trees can attain quite a bit of height in the same quite a bit of height in just a century or two. Okay, so while you have these trees that were cut down at the end of the 19th century, they're now 200 feet tall, and and so you might be tempted to say to yourself, I don't know what the concern is. The trees are all still here. And in fact, it's very deceptive to our human eye and our human time frame to think like, yeah, so we've got plenty of redwoods. Look at all these wonderful redwoods. The thing is that we didn't kill the trees, we killed the habitat. Old growth habitat is very special. And our current thinking is that it takes hundreds, if not thousands of years to return. And in the meantime, we're losing the biodiversity that has relied on it for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. Now, So in that context, you get to know these systems intimately, and it becomes a conversation where you feel that the redwood forest, the second or third growth redwood forest, can't remember itself. It is almost as if it has lost its mind. You could feel, if I were a better poet, I could find the words. Richard Powers in the Overstories, very good at this ability to this idea of atonement, really at one meant with the forest, where it's like there is wounds here that I can't see, but I understand are present. All I can do is, with my multidisciplinary vocation, right, which is between the humanities and the sciences, painting, namely, I'm a painter. That's probably my biggest identity, is to probe that and to open my heart to this place and these systems that I love more than I can adequately describe in this or any other lifetime. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Right,
you.
Obi, I had to pull out your books for this next question.
Mm.
It's from Joyce. I'm curious about the small round symbols on the front of the Atlas and the Forest book.
Mm. The icons, yeah, those are map icons. You can find a legend to each of them. It's an easy way, once you get the language, and there's a cipher in there, so you can figure it all out. You can almost like read them as you would letters or words that then tell a story. In all of my maps, I'm always trying to tell one story. A map that tells too many stories, just like a painting that tells too many stories, begins to fall apart aesthetically. I'm intrigued by the power there, the power of the cartographer to relay reality across, in historical terms, right? And I'm very conscious of that, and my responsibility, because all of this is real world stuff, but it's all filtered through my narrative, my invented geography, really. And that power to like sort of define history in a way, this is important. That's why there's no roads in any of my books. Like, if you want a road atlas, go get a road atlas. Like, if you want to know how to get somewhere, go get a road atlas. A field atlas is not concerned with the where of things, and that's kind of funny for a thing calling itself an atlas, but it's concerned with the how of things, how these big living networks coalesce to define this most beautiful corner of reality, California.
Oh, that's a great perspective, Obi. And we have one last quick question. It's from Ethan. Have you read Being Salmon, Being Human?
No. Yeah. Hey, that gets me to a larger point. Yeah, I got lots of salmon books, but I don't think I have that one. I'll have to look it up. Please email me. My email is coyoteandthunder@gmail.com. And just email me if we don't get to your question tonight, or if something I said maybe sparked something. I would love to be in touch. And on that point, I think now is probably a very good time for me to say, this Saturday, the 20th, I will have my first live in-person event in over a year, which is going to be at the Shibumi Gallery on 4th Street in Berkeley. And Shibumi is spelled Shubumi. Shibumi. Yeah. And I will be selling my paintings. Original paintings from the book will be offered for sale there. They're actually going on sale on my website, which is californiafiedatlas.com. You can go there Friday evening and see the paintings for sale. And then I will be signing books and hanging out this Saturday, Shibumi Gallery, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. or so. So get on down and say hi, and we can do we can do a high five from 6 feet away.
Oh, thank you so much. I hope that that many of the people from the audience and myself will be there on
Oh,
Saturday.
thank you, Catherine. Right on, right on. I look forward to seeing you in person.
Thank you. And Jane, this is in response to Jane's question. A list of the books will be sent out tomorrow along with the recording.
Cool.
So thank you, Obi, and thank you to everyone for joining us tonight.
All right, good. So we're wrapping it up now. Thank you, Catherine. I really appreciate the opportunity and really am grateful to the Walnut Creek Library Foundation for it.
And as I said before, if you enjoyed tonight's program and look forward to more, we invite you to make a gift to the Library Foundation.
Great.
Click the donate button on our website at wclibrary.org or in the chat box. Your gift makes a difference. And we hope you'll join us for next month's Live from the Library program, Art and Algae Journey into the Curious World of Seaweed on April 14th with author Josie Islin, who will share seaweed stories from her newest book, The Curious World of Seaweed, describing how these foundational organisms succeed in their ocean niche and highlighting some cool women scientists. More information and registration link can be found on our website. And thank you again, Obi, and thank you to everyone who attended, and good night.